Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast, fresh-faced and raring to go again after the test window. On today's pod, we welcome Lynn Glaister of the CF10 Arms Park Rugby Trust to discuss the latest WRU plans for professional rugby and the Trust statement in response to it all. Plus, we'll look ahead to the next fixture block starting on Saturday against Zebra. There'll also be a look at Wales's autumn campaign from a Cardiff lens, Rags Corner, all the latest news from the capital and listener questions to answer. Joining me on the panel this week, got regular panelist Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
Very well, glad to be back, particularly after Josh McNally was so engaging and knowledgeable about rugby last week. I'm just glad to return, and I may finish everything with what do I know after that brilliant pod last week.
Good stuff. Tony Esposti, Tony, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to proper rugby returning this week.
And as I mentioned, we've got the chair of the CS10 Arms Park Rugby Trust, Lynn Glaister. Lynn, welcome back to the pod.
It's good to be here as ever, and again looking forward to proper rugby starting on Friday with Swansea.
Very much so. Yes, we shall get to the on-field stuff shortly, but we'll start with off-field stuff. On the last pod before the autumn break, it came just on the back of the WRU announcing their plans for professional rugby, which, just in case you've forgotten what they were, they're going down to 3 clubs from 4, with 1 in the east, 1 in the capital, and 1 in the west, plus a whole host of changes to the pathway, to the academies, and investment in the women's game. Lynn, what were your and slash CF10's thoughts when that finally came out, and just sort of the general way that the WRU have handled this process?
General way. Well, I think we've been a bit conscious, we've been very conscious of the fact that when they say there's going to be a capital side, a capital licence, that we are the capital, therefore Cardiff is going to have a licence. And we were conscious that we were still in the position where one of the West Wales teams presumably would go, or there'd be a merger. So we've sort of, I think we said in our blog that we maintained a dignified silence, because we were sort of aware that people say, well, what have you got to moan about? But the one thing that we did say at the time was that whatever happens, when they finally do come to sell us or hand the licence out, that they do it with Cardiff rugby in mind, rather than maybe an easy way to avoid litigation or to get a merger between teams or the like. And I think we were conscious of that at the time, and we said that we did say that, but it wasn't really picked up, because obviously they were dealing with the emotion of the other teams and whether they would exist at all. So we met as a board last week, and we decided that it's all very well Cardiff, the capital side, surviving, and great, but what's the point of surviving if it isn't actually Cardiff in its soul and its heart? And I think we do we want the future that's being promised at the moment? Well, yeah, we do. We want some of it. We're not anti everything that they're saying, and we want Cardiff to be there, but we felt it was about time to say a few things. Do you want me to go a bit more into what we said? And
yeah, so the CF10 Trust put out a statement last week on email to members and on the website as well. And it's, as we mentioned, just chatting about it before recording, then it's gone down very well. It's a very hard-hitting, in-depth blog post, and well worth reading. Go and seek it out on the website or via the Trust social media panels. But yeah, if you're able, it's quite a long blog, but if you're able to give us a sort of brief précis of it, then that would be great.
I'll have a go. I mean, I think I think we've always been in the position of being Cardiff and seen as being the favourites of many, and we are currently owned by the WRU, so that gives sort of more fire to that. But we, when we actually look at the rumours, for instance, the rumours that are going on, and it's pretty persistent now that the rumours are that Y11 is looking at buying into the capital licence, or whatever it may be, maybe buying us. And I think originally there was rumours of even wider involvement from other Welsh clubs. And I think we sort of feel, yes, we want to survive, but if we survive by having owners that have effectively done the dirty on their current club, how do we ever get into a position of trust with those owners when we're looking for more supporter involvement? So, I mean, some people would perhaps say that we're being a bit, sort of maybe doing down somebody that might buy us and might keep us to survive. But I think we do have to look and say, is that the best for Cardiff, or is that the best for the WRU balance book and the lawyers and the like? And that's very much what we were saying. So we felt we didn't want to stay silent anymore about that, and we felt that we wanted to express our opinion that when you do make a decision about the future of Cardiff, that it's done with Cardiff rugby, and it does respect the heritage. And yes, we're not afraid of talking about the heritage in the past. And turns out at the weekend, WRU have sort of decided that as well, haven't they? They're now sort of the fact that they talked about 120 years of history. Well, we've got 150 coming next year. So we want them to know that we're watching them. And it may only be one little bit of the thing, and they may not take any notice of us, but we want them to know that we are looking, and we believe that there are opportunities to make Cardiff a great team again, and that they really need to take that seriously rather than just try and make us into some homogenous blob on the rugby landscape. And I don't think any team wants that. And so we want ours is a call for the supporters to get behind a club that has that autonomy, has that ability to call its own future, albeit with a new owner. And we have got issues about the new license and the new way that they're looking, because it looks like the COVID loans are being put back on the clubs. It looks like you're asking the people coming in to put in so much more money that will it put off people who were interested. We're not saying we've got particularly in favour of one group or another, because actually we want due diligence to be done properly this time. But what we're saying is that will it be an entirely different type of people that come in for the club? Will it effectively be stadium managers? Because all the bit that's all about the makeup of the team, the makeup of the coaches, all that kind of thing is going to be taken in by the WRU. So are we looking for a venue operator? And that doesn't feel like something that our members want. So that's basically where we're coming from.
Is it something the trust is doing, or perhaps is considering doing at some point, sort of getting around the table with somebody like the Athletic Club and looking at ways that the supporters and the Athletic Club and members of both the trust and the Athletic Club can influence how this new ownership group comes about, whether that's by refusing a long-term lease on the Arms Park, or sort of not taking up the option of buying tickets and supporting that way?
We have met, a couple of our board have met with a couple of the CAC. We met with Keith and Chris, and actually Keith and I did a joint letter to the WRU, and asking for what their plans are for supporter input into any purchase of Cardiff. We've had a response within 36 hours, probably might have been even less than that, from Dave Redding, saying that they're currently finalising everything, and that at an appropriate point they will come back to support us. But I think that was quite a a significant thing. I've never, in the nearly 10 years that we've existed, there's never been a joint statement, a joint letter from the CAC and CF10. It's never been a thing that's even been on the horizon. So we were pleased to be able to do that with CAC. I mean, most of us on the board are members of CAC as well. So so it is natural, but it's never really a thing that's come about before. So we were pleased that happened, but how we move that on, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, it's very positive. Simon, Lynn mentioned there that obviously since we've last recorded a normal podcast, we had the guest one last week, but news has come out mostly via Wales Online of sort of some more details around how the professional game might be run under this new three-team model, and it's lots of central contracting of players and staff. It's the private owners basically just running the commercial side, as Lynn mentioned, basically being stadium managers. There's also the COVID loans going back on the pro clubs, whereas initially they were going to be taken back onto the balance sheet of the union. And then there's also this added thing around at a certain point, if a club is making a profit, then the WRU will be helping themselves to 50% of that as well. The CF10 Trust obviously speaks a bit about Y11, particularly as potential owners, but would we trust any potential ownership group who want to come in with those sort of conditions around their ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust our current owners, let alone future owners. I think, what we've gone through as a fan base has been pretty difficult. And from the point of the previous ownership coming in with lots of promises, and you think, okay, this could be stability for the long term and growth, through to obviously having to be rescued by the union, and now feels like a bit of a pawn in the overall game of what will the structure look like. Well, actually, Cardiff, wherever Cardiff goes, whoever buys Cardiff, kind of feels like quite an important piece of that. I mean, I wouldn't trust any ownership coming in on the current deal, because I can't see, as Lynn said, and the trust have said, I can't see how anybody coming in would have an interest in rugby or Cardiff rugby or rugby in Cardiff, whatever you want to put it, because the deal that they're coming in on has nothing to do with rugby. It's to do with the commercial aspects of it, and it's a deeply unattractive commercial proposition. I'm no commercially minded person at all, but I just can't see how anybody makes money out of what the union are offering. Even if they make a profit, taking that money away and going, oh yeah, we'll take some of that as well. I mean, who would go, yeah, that sounds like good financial sense. Let's do this. So I immediately question companies looking at that and going, yeah, we'll sign up for that, without then going, well, we won't. We'll sign up. We'll buy Cardiff, but we're not going to sign up to that deal. I think it works really well for the union at the moment not to have sold Cardiff, because you've seen what the Dragons have done. They've walked away from, and fair play to them, have been very vocal and bold in what they've said about it. I'd hope a privately owned Cardiff would say the same thing in terms of what's been laid on the table and the way in which it's gone about. But again, we've gone through a consultation period. Union said they've listened. It's not going to be 2 at the moment. It will be 3. And then we'll change all this other stuff as well by pouring the COVID loans, which is one of the biggest financial issues facing Welsh rugby, is those COVID loans that the union took out because the union couldn't pay what it said it was going to pay for player access and all those kind of things, and then just put it on the 4 professional sides to pay, and basically tied hands in terms of financial independence because of that. So I don't think we can trust our current owners. I wouldn't trust any owner that comes in based on that. They've got the union have just got themselves in an absolute mess with it. I just can't see how they get out of it. The potential now to, I think as we talked about last time I was on, have a capital city license bought that then doesn't play at the Arms Park, I mean, I jokingly said plays on the athletics track up in Leckwith, because that's the way we're going. And all this structure seems to drive towards it's about international success. It's not about, even though they'll say we want teams to be competitive in the URC and reaching knockout phase, it's not. It's not. It's about building, holding players, hot housing players for the international games. They're not thinking about the commercial model beyond can we fill the stadium through success. They're not thinking about can we actually be financially, commercially successful as 3 professional sides or 4 professional sides. I don't think that crosses their mind, unfortunately. If they are successful, that's a bonus. But I think it's very difficult to see how we can. Yeah, difficult to see how they get out of this situation. To be honest, other than giving 3 new licenses, which I think is a death knell. To be honest, because I don't think anybody will follow a Cardiff side that's got nothing to do with the current Cardiff side.
Tony, does that extend a bit as well to, let's say hypothetically somebody does come in and buy it privately owned, not Y11, somebody else, and then this Cardiff team ends up with the WRU running the rugby department as WRU A, B/C. Do you think supporters would actually be interested in that at all? Or is that just such a soulless entity that, particularly I'm thinking like those of us who are like the hardcore go in week in, week out, that they rely on, that I think Richard Holland once told us they don't have to worry about us because we're going to turn up no matter what they do, pretty much. Do they start walking away at that point when they think this is, I'm not interested in this sort of setup where it's just all about the national team?
I think you do get people walking away in that instance. The core that Richard Holland would have been talking about then was the 3,000 odd that used to turn up on a Thursday night watching Cardiff play Calvasano or whatever it was, and we'd be there no matter what. But I genuinely, sorry, I've started to get angrier and angrier as we've talked more and more about this situation. And I'm not someone who doesn't wear my emotions out loud, which is why you could see me ticking and shaking my head and stuff and bouncing. It's just they are so corrupt in everything that they've done. They will come out with one thing and then it will change at the last minute. They will deliberately send massive PowerPoints at the last minute into meetings to try and confuse and obfuscate situations, as they did with the Dragons. They're like a lawyer who's trying to hide a corrupt or a massive bit of evidence. So they just send over every single bit of paperwork they can, so you can't find that bit of evidence, as you see on TV all the time. It's like someone's watched, one of them has watched the Suits TV series and gone, I'm going to be like him. If they go 3 teams and those 3 teams are some weird concoction of the Ospreys Cardiff, I can see them losing at least half of the crowd that we currently get. What's that, 4,500? You'd also lose the Ospreys, which is what, about 4,500. There's 8,000 people gone. The Scarlets stay. If they're still branded the Scarlets, they probably are right, but they're still only about 5,000 or 6,000, right? And the Dragons, they massively still get 8,000. But are they going to stick around if their owners are going to have to give up profits? And will Buttress and those people who have just bought into the club want to stick around in this whole new deal? I genuinely think you could see those people walking away, because at that point, what are they running? They're not running anything. Especially if the WRU can go, oh, money, I'm going to have that. We need some of that to pay our players. Nah, you can come back later, get something else. When you're not making money, that's when you can keep your money. They are so, right, to answer your question, Dan, I would expect a lot of people to walk away. There is already a verge of people who are so frustrated with all of this. You only need to look at the comments around this South Africa test to understand how that is. And so I was out on Saturday and I was trying to explain to some of my friends about why Wales were losing so many players in this next international block. And it's because of the whole cap process. And that only gets worse if as you can expect happening, that cap roll goes because Reading will be like, oh, we can get rid of all the high price players. Let's send them away. Let's just have the young kids. That's cheaper. Let's do that. Oh, that'll save us money. Oh, let's do that. Like we're in a vastly worse position. We've got teams that nobody recognizes anymore. The heritage and the history of them doesn't matter anymore because the WRU don't care about it if they go down the route that they're currently pushing. And having people like the Supporters Trust at the Scarlets, the Osprey Supporters Trust, Osprey Supporters Club, who seem quite fanatical on a par with us as well, and obviously CF10 and the Dragons one, fighting tooth and nail to try and keep things going is so key for us at the moment. Lynn, Simon mentioned about how he hopes the sort of statement that you guys released would be the sort of thing a privately owned Cardiff would have done. Basically, the comments that I've seen on Reddit when it was posted there were, this is a brilliant statement and is exactly what you would hope the club would have said if they were able to. So that just and that I've seen Osprey fans praising it. I've seen Dragons fans praising it. I've seen people from England and South Africa even praising it. Like, it has universal praise from everything that I've seen. People have picked up points about complaining about the kickoff times, but I will bring the tinfoil hat out later if I need to. But it's just gone over so well. And from a personal perspective, knowing that there is still fight is just one of the hot things, and I will stop gushing.
That's good to hear, because sometimes you sit there and think, why are we doing what we're doing still, and will it actually be heard? But I think none of us are quitters. We've supported a team that hasn't, always won on the field. We're all people who we're quite hardy in that way, and I think we were emboldened really when we had our open meeting with the members to go through our survey and what was said and what people would say, and we realised, if we didn't already know it, that we had a lot of good people that were willing us to carry on and speak out, and I think I think we've got to sort of understand where the Cardiff rugby staff and management are on this. They're owned by the WRU. It's a really difficult thing for for them to be able to say anything. So in the absence of that, I think we felt we wanted to say something so that at least the outside world and our members and our supporters, the wider supporters, know that there are people that have actually noticed what's going on and actually care what's going on, and will criticize or praise things that are good and bad about the things, and that we'll carry on doing that. And I think and I don't know what it will do for our relationship, but we've been in that position before. Simon was on the board when he probably know that we've not always been the most popular group in the sort of, and we had to fight for some kind of recognition, and we're just carrying on, and and I think I've bored everybody who's now a director of Cardiff Rugby and or a potential investor about the need for supporter representation, and I hope that at some point somebody will actually realise. But but so thank you for saying that. It's sometimes you say things and you wonder whether you're on the right side, and I think we sort of knew we were, but it's good to have it validated.
I think as well, if we're looking at trying to find any desperate positives to come out of this situation, the strengthening of fan voice, whether it's through the Rap family, whether it's through Gwlad Rugby, whether it's through the supporters trusts and the Welsh supporter voice is stronger than it's ever been. the union has managed to unite some of the kind of tribal factions
My
within
blood
Welsh
pressure's
rugby.
stronger than it's ever been.
Yeah, and I think there's that voice is really important in Wales, where we know that the scrutiny of decision making at the top level hasn't been there. Some elements of the journalism has just been very client type journalism. There are fan organizations and supporters and fan created content, whatever you want to call it, that has flooded that gap and gone, we will hold you to account. And I genuinely believe that voice is heard in the WRU. I think that there are accounts now and organisations that are quite influential in terms of Welsh rugby public opinion. And that's not kind of bigging up anybody in particular. I just think there's a groundswell of people talking about the same things and going, hang on a minute, this isn't where it is. And there's some great fan writing, fan content, blogs coming out that are right on the money in terms of being forensically looking at the decisions that are made. What's the culture behind them? What does this say about where we are in Wales and where rugby plays? And it's leaving the WRU in very difficult positions, because actually we know that the media is kind of fragmenting and people aren't getting their content from Wales Online or the Western Mail anymore, or BBC Sport. They're getting it from lots of different sources. And I think, long may it continue that those responsible for our national game have to hear the voice of the people that go and watch it and the people that pay to go every week. So, it is a pretty awful situation, but if there is a positive, it feels like that accountability is coming through fan groups and through fan created content as much as it ever has.
I can see why they wanted to talk about taking the emotion out of the decisions, and so I can see the theory of it, but I think but then to try to sell the emotion of a Welsh game at the weekend, it was pretty fantastic, the light shows and everything that they did, and I just think that all of us here and wider group just need to show that there is passion out there for our teams, and that doesn't come from blindly following somebody's lead, and that we care, and there are people that know a lot more than I do about certain aspects of the sport, but they can do their part, and then I do my part in other ways, and I think I was going to say they ignore us at their peril, but that's probably been a bit. But we'll carry on making a noise, and whatever we do, we do not go quietly into that good night. We're not going to, are we? We're good. I think we'll keep on fighting. I think it was hard when you sort of consider what the Ospreys supporters were potentially going through, and what and you start to think, can we have a voice in this, because we're owned by the WRU. They keep paying for our players, and they things like that. But
we've had a similar stance on the podcast, to be honest, Lynn. We've tried to shy away from talking about some of the politics bits, and because there is an element of, well, we don't want to annoy other people, don't want to come across annoying other people. Well, we'll just talk about the Cardiff aspects of it, but yeah, there's I don't understand how anyone how the WRU could even think that anyone would trust Y11 in any way, shape, or form from a sporter perspective if they've screwed over all of those Osprey fans just to buy us out. Because what's stopping them doing exactly the same thing when something else comes up?
And I think it is important that to say we don't know who the others are, so we say this all with the sort of understanding that we're not privy to who the other potential bidders are.
Unless one
But
of them's Trump, then the Y11 are probably the worst at this point, right?
oh my God, there we go. You found somebody.
I just made a note to say, as Tony's legal representative, when you called the WRU corrupt, you meant morally and not actually physically
Yes,
corrupt.
yes. Sorry, sorry.
Just to wrap it up there, Lynn, from a Cardiff perspective, obviously you've mentioned that they are in a difficult spot in terms of being WRU owned and making public statements. But what would the trust like to see from the club over the next sort of few weeks and months? It may be in terms of whether it's the new chairman, Mr. Waddington, coming out and doing some sort of supporter event, or whether it's transparency around what the selling process actually looks like at the moment. Is there anything that you think they can do to sort of be a bit more in touch with supporters?
I mean, all of that, but I'm, certainly in terms of the selling process, but I just think it's really difficult for them. So I think all we can really ask of good people who are doing their jobs and trying to keep them, the houses and the rents paid and all that kind of thing, to just keep on doing the good stuff that they're doing in terms of the communication about the team and about, I think we've seen a real step up of the comms and the sort of all that side of things. So I think that's probably all. It sounds perhaps a bit ambitious really, but I think to just keep Cardiff, the positivity around Cardiff in the news and and out there, because if somebody does want to come and buy us, it's more likely that, if we've kept that positivity going, and that we haven't sort of gone into some kind of doom and gloom. And so as much as I'm would like more, and I'm not sure we can ask, can we ask anybody to do a Q&A when they don't actually know what the future is? We've called for Q&As for years from various people, but if Scott Waddington stands up next week and does a Q&A, most of us are going to say, well, he hasn't told us anything, and how can he when we're still waiting for the WRU to make their decision? So if anybody should do a Q&A with supporters, it probably should be the somebody from the WRU.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine they would be it to comment on the CD box you've got in the background, or the tick box, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? It would be like an interview with Marvin, the paranoid android.
Brilliant.
It's
But I've always had that there for a reason.
good stuff. Well, I think that covers all the off-field stuff for now. As Tony said, us on the pod, we haven't gone too much into it over the last few weeks, and we won't continue to press on every week. We will just cover it as and when something major happens. But I think it's positive for listeners and supporters to know that there's plenty of good people still fighting the Cardiff rugby fight while this all goes on.
We only don't comment on it because it stops me getting into trouble, right?
Well, yeah, there is that as well.
Anyway, we've got it. Nothing's going to happen until at least after Christmas now, is it? They've told us. They've told us that.
Is that because they're all on annual leave?
We shall see. Gonna crack on with some news then. Obviously, we've been off for a few weeks, so there's a few things to cover. We've had a few players go out on loan. Ellis Bevan played 3 times for Bristol, 2 Premiership Cup appearances and a game against Argentina A team. Joe Cowell had an appearance for Bedford Blues on an emergency loan, with Mike Raya taking him in for a game in the Championship. And then Johan Emanuel and Ian Davis have both gone back to Bath as part of a pre-agreement with their season-long loan deals. Emmanuel played once, Ian Davis played twice for Bath in the Prem Cup. They are now back with Cardiff. We've also said goodbye to Oshan Roberts, who joins the naught appearances on loan club as he goes back to Sale, with a couple of others who've not really turned out for us, despite coming in to cover emergency gaps. Coaching wise, Josh Turnbull, Cardiff under-18s head coach and junior academy coach, is going to go on secondment with Wales under-20s this season. He has been Wales under-18 head coach the last few years and goes up with that group now to assist Richard Whiffin in the under-26 Nations and the World Rugby under-20 Championship. There's been 2 signings, one each for the Rags and the First. Alid Summerhill has signed for the Rags. Obviously, on the back of our podcast appearance, I'm going to assume. So we should be taking some percentage of his pay, I would suggest. But he made his debut or second debut for them off the bench against Newport on Friday. We'll cover that in Rag's Corner in a bit. But great to see him back, and hopefully as he gets fitter, he can score some more tries and put himself back out there, possibly for a return to the professional level. And then the first have signed Cornel Schmidt from the Bulls. He is a South African utility back, started at the Western Province, played Currie Cup for them and a couple of times for the Stormers before switching to the Bulls, where he's mostly played for the Blue Bulls in Currie Cup and a handful of games for the first team. 28-year-old. The media release said he's known as Copper, spelled Koppa. No context for that at all, so absolutely no idea what that's linked to. Also said that he graduated with 6 merits, so I hope that's now a thing where whenever we sign somebody, we get their like GCSE results or something along those lines, just to really get a rounded view of them.
It has to be. Every player released now has to have a full academic record, certificate of achievement type thing, just so that we know. It was such a weird thing to put
that old red book.
Yeah, it was such a strange thing to put in the release. Kind of like, oh right, yeah.
But he comes in 28 years old. Utility back, seems to be able to play fly half centre and wing. I suspect we had a question whether he'd play more 12 or 13. I wonder whether we might see him more as a 13/wing, as that kind of big physical guy to replace both Lilo and Gabe Hamer-Webb, having left last summer, whether he slots into that position. But we'll do the team selection for Zebra in a bit, and if he features. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he goes. From the little clips the club put out, he seems quite a big guy, quite a fast runner, as you might expect for somebody on those fast pitches down in South Africa.
It was Hollow-esque, that video, from the sort of announcement video they put out when we signed Willis back in the day. That it was very reminiscent of that. So if we can get any sort of production near that sort of level, it would be an incredible signing.
If you sort of see that Ben Thomas as the 12, that's where Wales want him to play, therefore it's more likely when Ben's playing that he would be playing at 13 anyway. So
yeah, but hopefully he does well, and we will keep an eye on him. And then two sad pieces of news to finish. Two former players who've passed away recently. Clive Evans started at Bridgend Sports RFC before joining Cardiff in 1965. Nicknamed Hollywood, he was described as short but brilliant in the back row, played 94 times for the first 15 and a number of times for the Rags as well before returning to Bridgend Sports in 1973, where he played on until into the 1980s. Now, Mike Watkins began his rugby career around Newport, spent the first 2 years of senior rugby at Crumlin RFC ahead of his move to Cardiff. Spike, as he was known, a physical hooker, played 118 times for the Blue and Blacks between 1975 and 1981 before returning to Newport, where he finally won Wales honours, famously captaining the side on debut against Ireland in 1984. That's Clive Evans, aged 85, and Mike Watkins, aged 73, who passed away recently. Our thoughts with their family and friends at this time. At this point of the pod then, just to say, if you do want to hear more of us, please feel free to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on, or on YouTube to the Rap channel. Also check out the Global Gainline channel, where there's plenty more rugby content coming your way. Do feel free to drop a like on the video, or leave a rating and a comment on the podcast platform as well. We will endeavour to read them out, but only if they're nice. Not reading out any nasty ones, so get over it. We'll move on now in the middle part of the pod to actual rugby action. Cardiff return to action this weekend as part of the second fixture block. It's 10 games in 10 weeks after the relatively ease of the 5 games in 5 weeks that we had in that first fixture block. Lynn, I'll come to you on that first fixture block, obviously your first appearance of the season. What did you make of that, and where Cardiff are going into this international break?
Well, I was lucky enough to be in Limerick for the game out there. It took that as being, don't go to many big away matches because it costs so much nowadays, doesn't it? But was out there, and to see the fight they put up there to actually get bonus points, and we could so easily have won it. I think listening to Josh McNally last week on the pod was just a real good understanding about the sort of backbone that the club is trying to put in, and the sort of conversion from losing bonus points to winning bonus points. And so I think my feeling is that it was great, and obviously being at the home matches was, reminds you what it's like to be at the Ouse Park when we're fighting. But it is also a, the sort of worry when you then start seeing the injuries piling up, and so I'm sort of concerned from there. But yes, what going over to Limerick and being there and thinking that we could be in a chance for winning was quite different from some of the other away matches that we've done over the last few seasons.
Yeah,
Which
that's
shouldn't be
definitely true.
that sounds negative, but I always want to win, but you sort of don't go away expecting to very often.
No, it is very. There's been many trips which have been about the trip less than the rugby. It's fair to say. Um, Simon, with a question, which I think comes up all the time. Looking ahead to this next block now, obviously, it involves 6 URC games, but also the 4 Challenge Cup pool games. Charlie asked, "How do you think we approach the Challenge Cup?" I suppose it's a case of, do we target the league, do we target Europe, or do we think that the squad is in a spot where we can try and balance both a bit better than we did last year and go for both?
I don't know how much options we've got. We'll come to team selection later, but I don't know how much rotation we can do. Last season we talked about we got it a bit wrong. We could have got a better results in Europe, and it would have had a home quarterfinal. I think we've got to learn from that, but it's also about momentum, isn't it? Because we went into the international break and we really had to fight for some of those wins. The Dragons, Edinburgh, Connaught, they weren't the kind of we were blowing teams away. The positivity was about the fact that we had fought for them. And as you said, Lynn, Teddy was out injured. There was a bit of disruption. We didn't have Harry for one of the games. We had to put Beetham at 13. So there's a bit of fight and resilience to kind of get those wins. We weren't, burying teams by any stretch of the imagination. And it's about the rugby calendar, isn't it? Just as we kind of get momentum, you're then off. And I thought, Josh said it really well last week around kind of twiddling your thumbs for a bit and not really. It's a Saturday's game, I think, is really important. I would go for it in Europe, to be honest. And that's not just because I'm going to Paris and I want to see us win against Stade, but those French teams are beatable in Europe at this level because they don't really, until depending on how they start. So possibility of catching Stade cold, but it's going to be a massive game. Ulster at home, I think we probably would want to win that. Exeter away, you want it done before Exeter away, really, because I don't think we've got a great record down there. I remember us getting absolutely thumped one Sunday was that the Champions Cup?
Yeah.
We got buried. It was awful. So I think you've just got to keep going. I'd pick the strongest possible side available. You could probably I think we're going to have to bring in a couple of players anyway, because we're going to have internationals that are rested. Josh Adams suspended for the Stade game.
It depends if he passes
Ruck School.
Ruck School, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But we've been going so well. I just think the coaching team haven't changed the team that much. They haven't cut it about. Some players are going to get a bit of a rest this weekend because they're not going to play for Wales, and they're not going to play necessarily. They're not necessarily. Obviously, they're not going to play for us. So, I'd like to see us maintain consistent. This is a big block, as you said, Dan. 10 games. And it's going to make or break our season because the block after that is a nightmare. The end of this season is awful in terms of the game. We've got a good few home games coming up. We've got to win them. And I think that includes the Europe games. Win the games in Europe at home. If we can beat Ulster at home, beat Racing at home, those are big scalps. So why not? But as Lynn said, it depends on who's fit come those games. But I'd like to see us give it a crack because, again, getting through it's not quarterfinal, whatever it is.
16, round of 16.
Round of 16, whatever it is, I don't know. That puts money in the coffers if we get a decent enough tie. And this is how we ended up in Bilbao. just momentum started to build, and we need momentum going into that last block. I think, because that's tough.
So the fixtures for the next 10 weeks, Zebra away, Stad away, Ulster home in the Challenge Cup, Scarlets home, Dragons home, and Ospreys away are the festive derbies. And then we've got Racing home, Exeter away, Benetton home, and then Ulster away in the league, playing them twice in this block. Tony, I don't whether it's a points total or whether it's just sort of where we sit in Challenge Cup table and URC table. What do we think is a good return if we're sitting there when the Six Nations is getting underway? What are we roughly happy with Cardiff having done over this 10 weeks?
I don't want to lose ground in the playoff race. So I can't give you a points total, but staying in touch with the other teams around us and making sure we're still in a strong position so we don't have too much to do in that final block, because as Simon said, it's going to be tough. There is a thought to try and rotate people for Europe, because the league is probably more important, I think, based off previous years. But I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to do that due to injuries and stuff like that. But we just need to stay in. The problem with having such a good start and being top four is that if we fall off and we finish 9th or 10th or whatever and miss out on playoffs, then it looks like a bad season, compared to if you start 10th and you finish 8th or 7th or 8th and pushing for playoffs. That looks like a better season. So optics perspective, we need to get playoffs, personally. So.
Yeah, and I think Simon's point about getting Europe done, like you can rest players. If you win those first two games in December and then take a bit of momentum through the derbies, I think we'd love to send a big team out for that Racing game at home in early January, Saturday afternoon. That'd be really good. But if we can then get to that Exeter game and say, right, let's just send anyone down there, really, like a couple of fans on the bench, that would be a really good spot to rest people for. And then obviously we get to those final two games. Benetton will be a big one at home, but that Ulster away game will likely be without internationals as well, because they'll be in Wales camp by then, as it's the week before the Six Nations starts. So that'll be one that you're probably looking at maybe not picking too much up from that either. So there's opportunities there to rest people on the way. I think the other thing I'd say is that we can tweak the lineup a bit, because the squad is deeper now. Like we brought a couple of youngsters in last year, like guys like Steph Emmanuel and Tom Bowen, who were sort of really raw when we rotated them in last season, and now becoming more senior players, and so it's not so much of a drop down to bring them in now. So hopefully that will show itself in that we can make a few changes each week, but still maintain that momentum and still pick a strong team.
Whatever we do to try to retain that home, the home wins, because we have so few home matches in reality. So actually making sure that they are as near capacity as we can get them is really important. It's important for the financial bottom line, but it's actually more important for the feeling around the club and the feeling of what Cardiff is. And so I think even if you wanted to maybe not go so hard on the Europe, it's very difficult. I mean, I'm going to the Ulster game with some friends who are from Ulster supporters that we meet when we go over there, and it was just fantastic beating them last year. They might be friends, but you want to beat them, and I want that feeling again.
You want to beat your friends more.
Ulster always bring a good following to the Arms Park as well.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing to kind of put it, we're going to have some players that haven't played. Not only
it was really good
Cardiff,
that Bevan
but in Wales that haven't played for a month.
Yeah.
So coming into that Stad away game, you'd be tempted to go as fully loaded as possible, because you'll be reintegrating some of those players. You don't know where kind of Ben Thomas's head's at after the last few weeks either. So getting back might be a breath of fresh air for some, but they're still going to need that play themselves back in. But that's where, people like kind of McNally, Al Lawrence, Millard are really important because they've been keeping going. Not literally, but they're the heartbeat of the team, aren't they?
It was really refreshing to hear Josh McNally talking about how much he hated not playing, and about that sort of he wants to be out there and wants to be playing, and we get here a lot about the people needing rest, and I guess I get that, but actually it's good to hear the sort of that people really want to be out there.
Yeah.
So we do get back out there this Saturday. Cardiff are away at Zebra. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff UK time on Saturday afternoon. Premier Sports, the only place to watch this one. Looking at head to head, I think sometimes you get a few comments. Oh, it's one that we should be winning, but Zebra's always been quite tricky for Cardiff. We did beat them last time at home, but looking at the last times we visited Parma, it was a 22-all draw at the start of the 23-24 season. We won by 4 points, 30-34 in March 2023. Before that was a 10-point win, a 3-point win, and then they beat us in 2018, 26-24 as well. So it's certainly not necessarily been a happy hunting ground for Cardiff. Always a tough one to go. We will be without a lot of players. We'll do the full team news in a second. But Lynn, I wonder, do we still think we can get a result there despite everything that's stacked against us this Saturday?
Despite some of my negativity, I am the eternal optimist. I always think that we can win, and then maybe by about 3/4 of the way into the second half, I'm sort of having to reassess. If you've got players who've got fire and want to show what they can do, you can always pull out a result, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, so we'll go into team news then, rather than doing it all in one go. We'll go position by position because there's a few positions where there's just a lot to talk about in terms of player availability and injury, etc. So Simon, we'll start up front with loose head. Obviously, Danny Southworth in the Wales squad, so not available. Ed Byrne, mentioned by McNally last week, is slowly getting back into training. Still no sign of him in any training footage though, so we assume that he's not available this weekend. It leaves Corey Domachowski and Reece Barrett as the two options for the 23. To go next to them, just if that influences decision at all, it will be Dav Hughes starting hooker, we assume, because he's the only one. Well, now that Liam Belcher has picked up a neck injury in Wales training, and Evan Lloyd has been called up as a replacement for him to face South Africa this weekend. We're not too sure. I sent a message out earlier. I don't know if there's even well known within the club exactly what they're doing on the weekend. We assume they will be getting someone in on loan. There's obviously Kirby Myhill is out there, having finished his short-term deal at the Scarlets. I noticed that they tagged Cardiff trained with Bath last week, and they tagged Jasper Spandler, who's a young hooker at Bath. He's currently on loan at Worcester, but in the same situation that Harvey Cuxon might have been in, where he's on loan from Bath to Worcester, but went with the Scarlets to South Africa anyway, so they might fancy getting him some game time at Zebra if that's an option. Or there's Lewis Morgan, the former Scarlets hooker currently at Carmarthen Quins, who trained with Cardiff quite a lot last season, was named in our European squad, ended up going to South Africa with the Dragons at the back end of last season. But
I think I was chatting to his parents at the Cardiff RFC Carmarthen game.
Oh, very possible. But he may still be around. So there are options there. But yeah, so it's between Byrne and Barrett to go. Domachowski and Barrett to go with Hughes, and then presumably Sebastian starting at tight head. Which way would you go with there, Simon?
I mean, I think, we haven't talked about the podcast's very own Andrew Ford, who in the chat let us know that he once played hooker in an under-13s game due to an injury crisis and won a scrum against the Head on their 5-metre line. So, let's not rule out some people closer to home. Good luck, Fordy, in Italy at the weekend. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of bare bones, isn't it? I think if Domachowski is fit, you pick him. Obviously, Hughes is the only one. I'd keep Sebastian in. I think him and Wainwright are interchangeable, but he's been going relatively well. They seem pretty confident and comfortable with him. The scrum's gone okay. You've got Wainwright to come off the bench then if needed. So I think this whole selection is just going to be, well, those are the ones that are still standing. So let's go with them and have others on the bench. But if that's the front row, Sebastian, Hughes, and Doma, I'd pick that. And in any normal game, you'd kind of go, yeah, that's not a bad front row. Hughes gets around the park really well. He seems to be a good carrier, different to Belcher. It's the line out that kind of goes a little bit wonky sometimes, but it'll be really interesting to see what they bring as well, because their game against Leinster seemed a bit of a weird one. I know they got kind of well beaten in the end, but at half time it was something like 26-21, and there was Leinster had a red card, and then they got a red card, 20-minute red card, I think, and Leinster did what Leinster do when you go a player down and just blow you away. So I think they're not to be taken lightly, but if we can slow ball down, I think that'll be important, and maybe that affects the back row who you pick. But yeah, front row, I'd go with that.
I think the other
So
thing to say about Dav. Oh,
sorry.
sorry, go on, Tony.
I was quickly looking while we were talking. Interestingly, Doma and Sebastian haven't started a game together. Sebastian has played with Southworth twice, three times, I believe, and Barrett, and Dom is only starting when Azza is the other side of the scrum. So I wonder whether that factors into the decision, and you start Barrett and Sebastian because of that connection. But I was just interested, which was why I was quickly checking previous things for partnerships. It's really like we don't talk about prop and hooker partnerships hugely, but knowing how the other one scrummages is quite key.
It's interesting. I was going to say about Dav Hughes as well is that we might bring somebody in, but I think he does have the engine to go for 80 if he
Yeah,
needs to on Saturday as well.
Yeah.
And with if a hooker is going to come in late in the day and then there's going to be struggling to pick up lineup out calls and getting that cohesion in a key position. It wouldn't surprise me if whoever comes in does just sit on the bench for 80 minutes in Parma and Dav Hughes plays the full game. Second row, obviously it's not the Teddy McNally anymore, but it just is McNally not now. That's going to be the new automatic partnership, I think, and who we would expect to start this weekend. Tony in the back row then. A bit of good news injury-wise here that James Botham appears to be fit. He's featured quite heavily in the training footage over the last few weeks, having undergone a surgery over the summer. So I think we've pretty much nailed in Big Al for number 8. But at 6 and 7, then there's 4 very good options in Ben Donnell, James Botham, Tane Basham, and Dan Thomas. Which way would you lean there for your starting two?
Basham and Dan Thomas with both of them off the bench.
The double sort of open side.
Yeah,
Interesting.
mainly because I think Basham can carry well and do that sort of 6 job alongside Lawrence. Lawrence is gonna carry a lot anyway. So if we think we're going to be under the pump a little, let's be a little bit more disruptive of the breakdown.
Makes sense. So obviously Zebra generally quite a quick side as well. And well, I'll put out a weather forecast. Could be nowhere near it, but it's going to be 7 degrees and quite sunny in Parma on Saturday. So on a cold, dry, probably quite hard surface, as it's meant to be dry there all week. Having the pace of Basham in that back row with Thomas and Lawrence will be quite handy. Moving on to scrum half then, Lynn. Bad news, unfortunately, on this one that Johan Mulder has picked up a fractured jaw in that training session with Bath last week. He's going to be out for at least a month. Obviously, a real killer blow that because he was so good in that first fixture block for us. But where one door closes, another one opens, and it might present an opportunity for Ellis Bevan to get back in the team. Ali Davis, obviously, also likely to be in and around the squad. Which one of those would you go from the start on Saturday?
I think I would go with Alice as the starter. And he's had some game time, hasn't he? So at least he's not coming in totally cold. But yeah, I think my gut feels that I want Alice to. They've sent him away to on loan, I think, to make sure that he keeps it keeps his development going, keeps fighting, and yeah, it'd be good to give him a chance on his return. But
He looked he looked good in that preseason game as well. He looked really snipey around the ruck, which was something he used to do, and then stopped doing when he broke into the first team. So if he's getting that back, I think he scored a couple of tries as well, didn't he, while he was on loan? So if he can do that again, like I'd much rather that and then Davis to finish a game out. So
Yeah, absolutely agree. And he also stopped doing it. We got Gatlanded as well. A long list of names who've been Gatlanded in Wales over the last few years. The rest, the midfield, I think, largely picks itself for Cardiff. Obviously, Callum Sheedy's still away. Hopefully, we'll get some game time at long
do
last this weekend. Go on.
do you not think so? I guess squad size dictates that he won't be, but if you've got Dan Edwards at
No
10,
one's getting released if that's the
no one's
question.
getting released.
No.
Dan Edwards at 10, Hawkins at 12, Ben Thomas on the bench covering 10, 12, and Hawkins covering 10, 12. Does Sheedy get game time?
I hope they do, just for like sort of morale reasons almost within the squad, because it's been a surprise that he hasn't. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, Jared Evans has done a really good job off the bench for Wales over the last 3 weeks. He looked really sharp, considering he didn't have a huge amount of form coming into the campaign. But Sheedy's form for Cardiff in those first 4 games in particular really deserves a couple of minutes and a cap. So I do hope they do put him on in that 22 jersey.
And it's his style that helps Ben be the player that he is, and that's
Mm.
why Ben looked so much better with Jared at 10. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I
I
think it
know
would
he's not
also.
getting released. It was just a thought.
Yeah, I think it would be tough if you're Sheedy to spend all that time in camp, and then I think the only way he realistically doesn't play is if they could go 6-2. Wales, will get on to autumn in a bit, but they could go 6-2 and just have Ben there. But if they were to put Ben in the 22 jersey and then Ellis Me in the 23 jersey, who's only been drafted in for that week, that would be a right kick in the bollocks if you've been in camp the whole time and then somebody turns up on Monday and plays on Saturday. But anyway, Sheedy's not available for Cardiff this weekend, is where that started. So Johan Lloyd will play at 10, and with Roy Jennings still injured and Ben Thomas also away, it's going to be Steph Emmanuel at 12. We would assume looks like that way from the training footage they've put out today as well. Tony, then in the 13 jersey, back to good news, fitness-wise. Mason Grady appears to be fit. There's Harry Millard, also still going well, and then the new lad Smith, possibly. Where would you go there?
Millard 13, Smith 14.
Seems fair. And then Simon, fullback. Winnett is a question mark. He's one we don't really know. He's been appearing in training stuff, but with a groin and sort of like a slow step up, it might be one they don't want to rush back. I don't know whether there's maybe 2 selections here that says if Winnett's fit, you do pick him. But then if he's not fit, do you go old and experienced in Halfpenny or young and very raw in Matty Young? Two full extremes of the fullback scale there.
I mean, the other one would be you put Bowen at fullback.
They did that in the
Played-
preseason as well, didn't they?
Yeah, he's played there for the 20s, hasn't he? You'd need, it depends if is he on the other wing, is Johan Stevens on the other wing. But either way, you could, in theory, put him at fullback. Maybe you put Young on the bench, just to bring him on, and you kind of mix all that. You mix all that up later in the game. It's bare bones again, isn't it? I think it's.
I sort of feel that Halfpenny is probably going to get saved for one of the European squad, maybe, and give him another couple of weeks of training others.
Yeah.
Really,
I wonder whether, based off that, we have Bowen at 15, Millard on one wing, Grady on the other, and Smith at 13, or swap Millard and Smith again and have Grady on one wing, Smith on the other, and Bowen at fullback.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because that 13 is such an important position for how we defend. Yeah. We were given
that's why I'd lean towards Millard, I think.
Yeah, really giving Millard credit for how he's adapted to that, but how he's kind of led that defence in that kind of spot blitz and that blitz on the outside. It's such an important position. I agree with you, Tony. I'd be tempted to keep that because you've got a younger player in playing at 12 as
Yeah.
well. Who knows what Johan Lloyd's going to do at 10? That's always fun. So maybe you just try to stick with people in positions. If Grady's fit, maybe you put him on the wing.
Yeah.
You put Stevens on the other, Bowen at fullback, and Smith to come on, because I don't know how long he's been at the club either. He was announced I can't remember when he was announced.
End of last week. Sometime.
End of last week. So has he had a full week?
Plenty of time.
He's
been training with Dan Fish. If you can get anything out of Dan Fish in a week, then he's fine.
He's got a very good educational record, so he'll be able to read the game and fit in really well.
My only, I suppose, question, Simon, is having watched a very small fullback struggle aerially for the last 3 weeks. Is Bowen the answer at Zebra for us? Especially if it's you and Stevens on the left wing, and then Mason Grady, who, despite being tall, is not particularly aerial dominant. Is that a potential issue for us if that were to be the back three?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think Bowen's been bad under the high ball. He has been targeted in a few games. I don't think he hasn't played like the Edinburgh wingers that would have been enormous, towering over him. So I think it is a worry. Yeah, it's much of a muchness. I just think if your weather forecast is right and it's cold and dry, it could be quite a game breaker from 15.
I just have flashbacks to Matthew Morgan at Saracens.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think, but I mean, Murray's really struggled. I think under the high ball over the autumn. It would be interesting to see if Bowen was properly targeted. I don't think he's an actual fullback, but I think the selection would be, well, can we get him into the team and Stevens into the team and break the game up? Can we turn ball over and bring them into it? I don't know. I mean, it's just, as I said at the start, what do I know? So,
It all depends. Like, if you've got Johan Lloyd at 10, who has played fullback a bit for Bristol before he joined us, I think. And you've got Steph Emanuel, who we've played at 15 a few times for the Rags, I think. You've got enough sort of like nous in that sort of like back three that can pivot around to try and make sure they're dropping back in and covering for each other. They would need to be switched on, and it would inevitably go wrong at some point. But I'm going to say again, Matthew Morgan and Saracens, and we're going to need with the sort of squad we're going to be taking, it's going to take some little moment of incredibleness to get us there and build us through.
Seems fair enough to me. And when you're picking from a small squad, I don't think you're going to be able to cover all the bases in the team selection either. Is probably fair. So
it's good that Stefan, the Stevens is back. By the way, like that's like I said it a bit about Grady last year towards the end of the season. Having Stevens back is like having a brand new player, because he was electric last year before he got injured. Absolutely electric. And he's been overshadowed now by how good Bowen has started. Like, people seem to have forgotten about him, but he was brilliant.
So we're going Emmanuel, Millard, Grady and Stevens on the wing, Bowen at fullback. Does that seem fair? Yeah, good. And then bench-wise then, I mean, who's left? It's
Andrew Ford.
New hooker / Andrew Ford / whoever wins the fan ballot. I think it was the offer is 1 glass prosecco for 1 minute played if you're the fan on the bench at the moment. And you got Reece Barrett, Sam Wainwright as the props. Then we've got, I suppose the question, Lynn, potentially is who covers second row. Do you put Rory Thornton on there as second row cover, or do you ask Ben Donnell to do it with James Botham and have sort of Ben Donnell as an emergency second row if you need to, or does Thornton's line out prowess help us quite a lot in that last 20 minutes sometimes?
Anything that, given the hooker situation, it's going to be difficult anyway in the line out. So therefore, perhaps somebody with a bit more nous in the line out actually would be a more sensible way to go.
That seems more than fair enough to me. Then we've got both of them in the 20 jersey. Ali Davis as the cover scrum half. And then outside back wise, I wonder, Tony, there was mention of this Smith being able to play fly half. Stefan Manuel can also play fly half, has done it once or twice as well. Would you put potentially Smith in the 22 jersey and then have Matty Young in the 23 jersey? On the basis as
Yes.
well that probably Johan Lloyd just plays the full 80 if he's available, like
Yeah.
if he's staying fit. Because the other option is Harry Wild could make a debut and wear that 22 jersey. But does it that
So
would to me be a likelihood that he doesn't come on like Wild at all unless
yeah,
there's an absolute injury. Whereas having Smith and Young available, you're more likely to bring them on to impact the game rather than just be there in case.
I'd much rather go Smith and Young than Harry Wild in that situation. It just feels a bit more stable, I guess. Yeah.
That seems fair. So just to run through the team as we've put it together there, 1 to 23, we've got Corey Domachowski, David Hughes, Javon Sebastian, Josh McNally, George Knott, Tame Basham, Dan Thomas, Alan Lawrence, Ellis Bevan, Johan Lloyd, Ewan Stevens, Stefan Manuel, Harry Millard, Mason Grady, Tom Bowen, and then a bench of AN other in the 16 jersey at this point. Reese Barrett, Sam Wainwright, Rory Thornton, James Botham, Aled Davis, Cornell Schmidt, and Matty Young. A team, I would say, Simon, that I think that can come up back with some points at least there, at least.
Yeah, I think so. As you say, it's always been a
Five
tricky
of them.
one playing them away. It's never been easy, but I mean that as Lynn said, the sensible option. I just looked at the back line we've picked of Bowen, Stevens, Millard, Johan Lloyd. I don't think sensible is possibly the way I describe it, but if
No.
that clicks and fires and we can get ball, I think slowing their ball down is going to be really important. I think if we can slow their ball down, make our tackles. I think it was really interesting what Josh McNally was saying last year about Gethin Jenkins coming back after the Japan tour and changing the defensive structure. I think we've got to slow their ball down that we have been doing this season. Then, yeah, why not? We shouldn't go out there like thinking we're not going to win it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like you say, if that backline does click, that could be very fun. That could
Yeah.
be some
Yeah.
good stat before the whatever comes in that Wales South Africa game after it at 3 o'clock. At least we might have seen some fun rugby for 2 hours before it.
Yeah, it does feel like we'll get the try bonus points, doesn't it?
It would be a shock if we didn't, if that backline were to take the field between them. Hopefully that Ewan Stevens is coming back in firing after a year or so out as well. Good stuff. Right, that's the Zebra game. As I said, Saturday, 1 o'clock UK time. Remember, if you see 2 o'clock, that's because that's local time. We'll move on to do a quick Rags corner. While we've been off, they finished their last fixture block with a 37-28 win over Llandovery at the Arms Park. Tries from Tom Harper, Tom Williams, Stefan Manuel, Oshan Darwin Lewis, and Sean Davis. Points from Lloyd Lucas, who got 10, and Ben Coomer with a single conversion off the bench. And then after 2 weeks off, they came back to play Newport away at Rodney Parade last Friday in front of the S4C online cameras. A 19-12 defeat, unfortunately, to the old rivals. Tries from Alan Rees and Elijah Evans. 2 points from Lloyd Lucas, not quite enough to get over the line. Big old question mark about where the TMO is in SRC live games after a couple of interesting decisions. But after the announcement this week of how they want to improve the SRC, hopefully that brings a few TMOs. We won't cover the fact they want to employ all the head coaches and have all the teams play exactly the same way, and that's another another mention for another time on the pod. But yet more central control wanting to come the way of the WRU. The Rags play Friday again, not in front of the S4C cameras this week, just because we're home and we can't play on Saturday, obviously, because Wales are playing. So it's Swansea at home on Friday night, 7:30 kickoff at the Arms Park. Get along to that one if you can to kick off your weekend.
7:15.
I went on the Rags website earlier and it says 7:30 on their website.
Oh, why have I got 7:15?
I do go there for 7:15 if you listen to the pod, and then you can't shout at me. Like if you're there 15 minutes early, oh well, but don't
Okay.
turn up 15 minutes later.
Yeah, yeah, don't listen to me.
It's
I'm
a Pontypridd
useless.
situation all over again, where everybody turns up 2 minutes before kickoff and crowds the ticket office and then complains when they can't get in. The other thing to mention, pathway wise, is that Wales under-19s had a one-off game during the autumn internationals as well. There was a healthy Cardiff representation as Tom Howe, Dylan Barrett, Callum Donoghu-Proud, Sonny McCabe, Lloyd Lucas, Bailey Cutts, Joseph Jones, and Rhys Cummings all featured. A 1928 defeat away at France, I believe, which isn't a particularly bad scoreline at all, considering it was a one-off game, and they've only come together for that. A couple of those mentioned as well. Tom Howe and Bailey Cutts, I think, still in school, but playing up a year to play for Wales under-19s. Joseph Jones bagged one of the Wales tries and continues his mad scoring streak for Merthyr. Another hat-trick on the weekend as they beat Cardiff Metis, already into double figures, and we're only in the end of November, and he hasn't even played every week for them. So interesting to keep an eye on his progress. And then we'll finish the podcast this week with the autumn internationals. We won't touch on it for too long because it hasn't been a very fun few weeks of rugby for Welsh rugby fans. Wales losing 28-52 to Argentina, beating Japan 31-22. It wasn't 31-22, was it? It was 23-22. I'm not sure why I've written that down. Last kick of the game. And then losing 26-52 to New Zealand on the weekend. Lynn, what's been your general sort of takeaway from watching Wales over the last few weeks?
Well, there was the hope, the hope, the hope that we would that we would win one of them, and we did win the one that I thought we probably could do. There's the hope that they start to play with let's say with a smile on their face, but just the feeling that they're actually enjoying being there and that they can get something together. I want Matt Sharrett to do well, and and I want that to happen. The realization that we're very light in some of the positions, and the the sort of I want to get back to the point where I don't resent the autumn internationals, and I've been trying to actually watch them and enjoy them. I don't know, probably won't feel that this weekend, but I want to do that. I think there have been areas where we look like we are making some progress, but it's a tough one, isn't it? Really, I was sad when Josh Adams did what Josh Adams did.
Mm.
My only possible side of that was I was thinking, well, if he's banned for 3 matches, then a couple of them are going to be the Welsh matches, then maybe one, maybe Zebra, and he comes back and he's not been injured, which, but given, and that's actually probably a plus for us, isn't it? But then you sort of struggle then because you've got you see the sort of Liam Belcher injured and all those sort of things coming on as well. But yeah, I mean, I think I sat with friends in a pub watching it on Saturday, and it did feel like we were giving it a go, but you did always feel that there was that point when it was just going to go away from us, and it would be nice to see that go. Sorry, it's a bit of a ramble, but I think that's probably how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think it sums it up quite nicely. Simon, you got any general thoughts? Any positives that you could pick out potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think we scored 4 tries against New Zealand. I probably should have scored a fifth, to be honest, because Reece Zammit, I think, had 4 players on the inside, or 3 players on the inside when he broke and just decided to go for the line. And I mean, I don't know. I just thought we've scored 4 tries, could have scored potentially a fifth against New Zealand. Does that show how good we are, how far this New Zealand side have really slid? Because they did what they always do to us. We came out after half time and went off the boil for 2, and they just scored and scored, and we got yellow cards and everything like that. So I didn't know whether that was a reflection on how far they had maybe slid as a side.
Apparently they were in Peppermint after the game on Saturday, so I do wonder whether at halftime they'd mentally already started to prepare what they were going to start drinking. So
yeah, because I mean the first half was quite competitive to a certain extent. On the score sheet, we scored some good tries. I think mean, the Japan game was just pretty awful, other than a really good, exciting finish with the last play really from R22 to the point of the penalty. Argentina was just a weird game. It was neither here nor there, and yeah, I mean, Saturday's just going to be a nightmare. I don't want Sheedy to play on Saturday because they're just going to run everything down the 10 channel hard and direct. But I think what we've seen is Jockey took time at Cardiff to get that attacking structure right, and probably this is the season where it looks like he's made the tweaks before the start of the season that makes that really work, and it looks really cohesive. The runners off the ball, everyone knows what they're doing. So I think really the key thing, wasn't it, to beat Japan, not slip below 12 in the world, then build into the Six Nations, hopefully get across. He's got to, the Wales need to decide who's playing 12 for them, and they've obviously picked Edwards is going to be the 10. They need to pick that 12 position because those 9, 10, 12 are so key to Jockey's system, I think. Llewellyn hasn't had a great autumn, I think, but I don't think really, and he's had a lot to kind of do, but he hasn't kind of owned that 13 jersey. So you've got Grady coming back. Maybe that's something for the autumn. But it's been what we expected, isn't it? Sometimes it's looked great, other times it's looked dreadful. Line-out's been really ropey at times, overthrows and stuff like that. So yeah, as I said on the chat, I think we should not play South Africa. We should all watch a nice Christmas film in the stadium, and everybody, everybody sit down and just enjoy that rather than what potentially will happen.
Well, South Africa have only got 25 players this weekend, by all accounts. They obviously without their overseas-based players, and they also have managed to fall out with their in-country clubs as well. So I noticed a couple of players have gone back to play for the Sharks this weekend who were otherwise in the Springbok squad. I think they might still muller us anyway, but they might take up the offer of the Christmas film. You never know. Like Razzie does like a Christmas film, I imagine. Like I can see him pitching in with them.
Razzie wants to play a game of rugby league, but Wales can play Union, like that old Wigan. Was it Wigan Leicester back in the day?
Mm. It was interesting watching South Africa. It was Ireland, wasn't it? And Ireland just imploded.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And you so I think it will probably be a very different game to that, because Ireland did try to take them on physically, didn't they? Whereas, perhaps Sharrett's style may mean that we do try to be a little more inventive. Just hopefully that doesn't mean we'll get run over.
They desperately need a defence coach, because the defensive system just has collapsed for long periods of games. And I think, is it Lydiat's come in to do that? I don't know. Was Tandy doing it?
I think Tandy's nominally the defence coach as well as the head coach. But yeah, I think it's apparent that he needs a full-time guy with him as well.
Yeah, because
Lydiat's defence coach is just, we'll tuck them low at their ankles. Just do that. That's all I did, and I was really good at it. That's Lydiat's defence plan.
We know from the conversations we've had on the pod with regards to Holly Davidson that the breakdown is a really difficult area. She's really hot on it. She's got an interpretation. We didn't adapt to it. But if you're not then going to steal ball, how are you going to slow ball down? And we didn't really have like that plan B. I think we learned and kind of backed off, but then we didn't adapt to kind of slow the ball down or to change how we were going to kind of slow New Zealand down. We just backed off the breakdown a bit. So I think there's things to learn. They're a relatively new coaching team, aren't they? I mean, what are we going to expect, really? But I think the defence has looked worryingly confused at times. Maybe confused isn't the right word, but it's looked ropey.
I wonder, Tony, like, results aside, when we look back on the autumn, and not massively including this weekend's game because it doesn't even feel like a test match at this point with the amount of players missing, but the 3 games we've had so far, is there an obvious sort of elements of Wales's game plan that you can hang your hat on and say, yeah, that's like that's something that we might expect to see from Tandy Ball going forwards? Is something a bit different, or is it too early to really put that in practice on the field?
The attack looks a lot like Cardiff the first year Sherritt was with us, and then and we know what happened that year. It was a lot of let's try and move the ball around with a smaller pack that's going to get beaten, and then how do you build off the back of that? You need the trust in players, and players need to be playing in that game plan or that style regularly, which is why Cardiff have started to flourish now. So I do wonder whether that is something that can be done internationally on a short turnaround basis, especially if you're determined to listen to determined to not pick Sheedy and Thomas at 10 and 12, because if you want to play that sort of Sherritt expansive ball, you need a more willing runner at 10, because Edward seems to be very sit off a bit, I think. Maybe I'm misreading that, but he doesn't seem to be as front footy as we've seen from Sheedy and Jared, etc. But yeah, to be honest, I'm just really pleased that coming out of the back of this autumn nation, Alex Mann has been so impressive that people are now like realizing how good he is. Azarati is starting to get plaudits, maybe because we've been pushing the rhetoric that ginger people look tired from the first 2 minutes. So don't judge that against him. I think Thomas has had a pretty good autumn. He's coming for a lot of criticism, but I don't think any of his performances were any different to what Hawkins did on Saturday. Like they're similar sort of stat lines every week from that 12 position. Where you mentioned earlier, Llewellyn hasn't really played well, and that really hampers you if you can't get anything going from 13, and your 10's not wanting to run as much, maybe because he's not as comfortable in that game plan as of yet. Then 12 is a really difficult position to play. But Alex Mann has been absolutely phenomenal, as is Azarati. And I'm really pleased they're getting applauded. It was really nice to see Azarati with his two kids on the pitch
that was lovely.
in the New Zealand game as well, wasn't there?
Yeah,
proper
just
good.
I picked out a few of the individual ones. Lynn, to start with Azarati, like, has he nailed down that 3 jersey now? Do you think like he is the first choice tight head that the Wales have got?
You like to think so. You always feel confident, don't you, when he's there? And if we're talking about passion, that man's got passion, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he shows it for us, and he shows it for Wales. So I hope so.
Simon, Alex Mann mentioned as well as had a good autumn period. There was a question on the Reddit comments. The problem with putting it on the Reddit, the first time we've put it on Reddit for questions, and everyone's just got random usernames, so I can't tell what their actual name is. But from username NoI8432, the question was that he went really well at 7 in the Japan game, and knowing that Cardiff have got Dan Thomas and Tane Basham in the squad, but is there an argument to try Mann more in that open side position? He obviously played for us there against the Lions last season. We won that one as well. Is that something that we'd like to see at Cardiff, or do Cardiff play in a way that it really doesn't matter whether you play 6 or 7? He's sort of doing the same job for us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, do we have like a left and right system rather than 6 or 7? I mean, I don't know what that means, but I read it somewhere in a book. But I think
He's really got into you, hasn't he?
I think 6 and 7. I think he's a 6. I just think you can play 7, but that abrasive nature that he's got, in your face, slowing ball down, you know, targeting the scrum half off line outs or any like scraps around the fringes. All great 6s are pains at some point. They do the hard yards, whether it's just hitting ruck after ruck after ruck and clearing out. I think he's a bit more versatile than that, and I think that's why he can play 7, because I think he does have, you know, a different skill set to, you know, my hero Mama Monatika, who was just teak tough, running around the pitch, knocking people out of rucks. But so I think he can, but we've got Basham and we've got Dan Thomas, who are both really great in that position. We've got Botham and Mann and Donnell. I think we can play them both,
Delarua.
but yeah, and De La Rua. And so I think I'd keep him as a 6. I think there's a lot of talk about him being internationally too small that I picked up. And I just think physically he stood up to everything. I mean, how he got up after that Japanese lock just torpedoed him, and he was at the next ruck. You know, hang on, it's Alex Mann. How's he got up after that? He's just been like hammered in his chest with like a shoulder. I mean, with full force. Quite remarkable that apparently isn't a red card incident for me, but yeah, I'd keep him at 6. I think that's where he's going to play. I don't think he'll play 7 often at international level, if I'm honest.
It also
I think he plays
underlines
7 this weekend.
Yeah.
It also underlines that a lot of people, when the idea of him playing 7 was floated, like, oh, he hasn't played there much. But Dai Young used to say at about 6 and 8 that the only difference is 2. Like, it's just the where you go on the scrum is slightly different. Open play, it's very much about what the coach wants to do. That, you know, there's not the 6 has to stand here and the 7 has to stand here, and particularly the way Cardiff use Alex Mann, that, you know, he was wearing a different number on his back, but other than the side of the scrum he packed down on, there was no difference to the way he played, whether it was 6 or 7 there. So, and the same goes when people move, you know, 7, 6, and 8 as well. It's just tactics, really. It's not a whole new position. It's one of the only areas on the field where being a back rower, it doesn't matter too much. Yeah, 12 and 13 are quite different centres wise, but I think it's very different in the back row where there's a lot
We talked
more
about that earlier, right?
skills
Like
crossover.
where we talked about that earlier, right? When we were picking our team, where, like I said, we should have 2 open sides. One's going to wear 6, one's going to wear 7. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to attack the ball, and they're going to try and use their skill sets.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's like a Thomas Young or a Martin Williams type out and out kind of tyro, you know, jackal threat. He's, you know, he is that hybrid, so he can play them both.
Tony, then the final comment comes from, well, is it Kiev or BMC Kiev? Could be, not really sure, could be either. But the final part of their comment was there was a bad autumn for the backline. Adams, who really looked like a dependable, experienced 14 over the summer and first block for Cardiff, invited a lot of pressure back onto himself, and then Ben always gets a rough ride, but he says his form has been low, and then says he doesn't suit Edward's style of distribution, looked far better with Jared, as you mentioned earlier. Obviously, Sheedy hasn't played either. Considering we are the top Welsh team at the moment and we've attacked very well generally, is there a concern about them coming back to us and maybe not being as confident and free-flowing as well, or do you think they can just slot back in?
I think I mentioned earlier about confidence in the structure filters through to the rest of the back line. And if your 9, 10, 12 aren't getting that, don't have that confidence because one of them isn't as confident in that structure as they could be, then that then impacts out, it radiates outwards, doesn't it? So Adams, apart from his absolutely incredibly stupid ability to manage to shoulder 2 people in the head at the same time, I don't think you could take much from his autumn. He'll come back, he'll play a slightly different role for us because he'll be opposite Tom Bowen, who sort of has a similar skill set to Reece Zammit, but they will use them differently, and Sherritt will try and would have used them slightly differently. I don't think you can read much into Adams. Thomas, I think, again, is suffering from that unfamiliarity of a system from there. Not to make excuses for him because he's not been magnificent, but I don't think he's been as bad as everyone has tried to make out. Like, there are things about him that make people think he's not an international centre. People say he's too small, but in the same breath, we'll say Hawkins is the right size. But Hawkins is the same size as him, roughly, I think. Interestingly, if you want to have a look at international centres, have a look at Jamie Roberts in 2009, and then Jamie Roberts in later years, just to see the difference in physique that can build up in a short space of time. That all comes off being in that system, being confident in what you're doing, and knowing the sort of game plan that you're going to get. Wales aren't going back to a crash ball 12, no matter how much the supporters and stuff like that want. And that's what people seem to think they want Ben Thomas to be, but he's never going to be that. And that's why Max Llewellyn having a bad autumn also factors into that, because you've got no go forward there. You've got tentativeness inside. So you're expecting stuff to happen and it's not happening. Anyway, yeah. Ranting.
Yeah, I got quite annoyed on the weekend, get on my soapbox for a moment, about sort of the narrative around Joe Hawkins's performance on Saturday, and that he's the answer at 12 and he was so much better. And not to drag down Hawkins, but I just think him and Thomas did pretty much exactly the same job. And that if Thomas had put in the performance that Hawkins did on Saturday, the comments would have been around, oh, he doesn't carry, because Hawkins only carried the ball 2 times into contact in 80 minutes, and he missed 6 tackles. And if Ben Thomas had missed 6 tackles in 80 minutes, I mean, I dread to think the sort of veracity of the comments that would have been on, vociferousness of the comments that would have been online. And what reasons for that are, I don't know. There's obviously the element of the fact that he plays for Cardiff, and I think there's a lot of people who just don't like anyone who plays for Cardiff stepping up. But I mean, there's also the undertone of him being the only ethnic minority player in that team as well, and you wonder if that plays into it a little bit, sort of unconsciously from people at the same time. But Ben did the job he was asked to do in those first 2 games, which is distribute the ball, get it wide as quickly as possible, kick if it's on. He's not there to carry. Hawkins did the same thing, made a lovely pass in that second half of the third try, I think it was. Really good pass, but didn't do anything better than Ben did. They both did a solid 6 out of 10 job pretty much in that system, which hasn't worked too well. I think I agree with the comments that Max Llewellyn also hasn't done anything particularly wrong. He hasn't played badly. I just don't think he quite fits. I think we need a slightly quicker 13, somebody who's like more of a genuine strike runner. I also don't think they've used him quite well enough. They should be bringing him short a lot more rather than leaving him out in the wide channel, so that there's more time for the likes of Ben and Hawkins at 12 to create a bit. It makes a bit more space for Murray to hit the line as well. But yeah, just beyond that, my soapbox about the narrative around Ben and Hawkins for a second, that yeah, it just doesn't sit quite right with me around why one is being singled out and really picked on, and the other one is suddenly the answer when there's actually not much between them. But
there's always a player in every
yeah,
generation that is the one that everybody has a go at, and it's often the ones that are slightly quirky in the way they play, slightly different. They do the when they get the ball, you're never sure what they're going to do with it, and when they do something wonderful with it, you're excited. And we all, we've seen those times at Cardiff, haven't we? Whereas, but there's always that chance that it's going to go a little bit wrong. And whilst you can accept that when you're watching it person week in, week out, but if you expect perfection, yeah, you're probably never going to get that with Ben, are you? But you are going to get a sort of game breaker at times if you allow it to happen and you somehow work out those connections.
absolutely. I'm not going to linger on the South Africa game too much, because I don't think there's much to preview, really. We don't really know what the Wales team looks like. We don't know what the South Africa team looks like. Just hoping for the best, largely, I feel. Any other business-wise, there was 1 or 2 questions. There was a question about the game this weekend. Do you think the WRU knew about the fixture clash when they fixtured this game against South Africa? Interestingly, Wales Online, there was a throwaway line in one of the articles today that they think that this fixture was arranged as far back as 2020.
Yeah. There was a WRU statement, right?
Oh, is that where it's from? I just caught
it
briefly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's bizarre. Like, why are we arranging games outside the window 5 years in advance? And why we know that, but not the URC. When we are sit on the URC board, the WRU sit on the URC board, surely they could then say, well, we've already arranged our game for this window. Can we have that one as the game, the weekend where the URC isn't played? But yeah, I'm not
I'm
too sure.
surprised that it takes 5 years for
Yeah,
planning. It's 5 years ahead, to be honest, because when you're sort of arranging a timetable across the whole of world rugby and trying to work out who's going where, 5 years doesn't actually feel that feels like that might be right.
yeah.
But so
It's about a similar time in cricket. They plan the future tours sort of things around that sort of length of time. So yeah.
But also a sport where the international game dominates to the detriment of the club game as well, as particularly in England and Wales. And then the
5 years
other,
ague we were much better as a team as well, weren't we? So trying to organise New
Cricket or
Zealand and South
cricket or
Africa.
rugby?
maybe both after the first test of the
Yeah.
cricket last week. And then any other business question was Andy Robnev on Reddit asked, despite his age, would you give McNally a 2-year extension? He votes yes. I don't know any Cardiff fan that wouldn't vote yes, to be honest. But after his comments last week on the pod, it'll very be much up to McNally whether he wants to continue or not. But I'm sure that if he does, then there will be a contract there for him to sign because of how important he's become. And I didn't get a chance to ask last week what his exact plans post rugby were, but if he wants to put off the RAF for a bit longer, yeah, I'm sure he'd make a great coach. The way he spoke last week about the game and just generally, he seemed like somebody who any club would want to have around the environment. Simon, I don't know if you're going to come in.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that when I was listening to it, that going back, obviously the RAF have been really good to him in terms of allowing his career to develop and seemingly very even-handed around the contracts that he accepts. But just hearing him speak, just felt what a loss to the game he would be, whether as a coach or an administrator. We don't have good administrators. I think we talked about that right at the start. We're coming full circle, but his feel for the club, the city, the Welsh game was quite astonishing, really, considering he's only been here, a season and a half, really. Yeah. But you just felt the way that he talked about not only that, the pathway, but the importance of building that structure and building it through. You did feel, I think obviously he owes the RAF in terms of his, what they've allowed him to do, and I think he feels he takes that accountability and that responsibility very personally and seriously, and I'm sure that's what he'll want to give back, what they've given him. But I did feel a pang of that's quite a loss. Him talking about how he talks to Teddy, how he talks to Alex Mann, how the couple of things where he said, I just noticed a few things and I just wanted to go, could we just do this? This isn't quite working. The thought process behind it just feels like it's going to be quite a loss to Cardiff, but I think probably a loss to the game as well.
Yeah, I do hope that the WRU take into account that wider sort of thing that he gives the game, and the fact that he was one of the people that went in to the WRU from Cardiff has shown that I would, if he spoke in a similar way that he did on your podcast, it's shown it's got value to the game, and
which is why the WRU won't let us re-sign him, I
guess. Just hope that
I joke.
Oh, I know, but you don't know nowadays, do you? But like Dwayne, I just know Dwayne Peel's out today, isn't he? Worrying about the contract situation for players, and it's going to be bad enough for those with that are Welsh qualified. But you do hope that they do their best to keep him. And I would guess that the Cardiff coaches will want to, so they will be impressing on that.
Good stuff. Right. A bit of a bumper episode this week. Obviously, plenty to cover after a few weeks off, but I think we got through everything in a good level of detail there. Lynn, thank you very much for coming on. A pleasure as always to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Tony, thank you. And Simon,
Pleasure.
thank you. We will back next week, looking back on the Zebra game ahead to the European stuff. We might touch on the South Africa game if we got a bit of time as well, and any news that comes out. But until then, thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you next week.